I mean, I know I can't tickle myself, but I assumed that if I like used a feather or something that I could tickle myself.
No.
But you're saying I could, but only if when my hand moves, it doesn't move at the exact same time.
That's because there's that thing that your brain does where anything that you're holding, your brain views as an extension of your body.
You're like, oh, it feathers me now.
I'm part feather now. I'm a featherman.
Butterscotch.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 99 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam. I'm the robot deployer.
I'm Sam, and I make pictures.
And today is May 23rd, 2017. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything could happen on this show. There's going to be profanity, and then we're going to talk about stuff. So if you don't like those things, we're going to kind of section it out. So
Profanity first.
About 20 minutes of profanity, then 40 minutes of talking about stuff. So if you don't like either of those things,
we're trying this new batch processing way of doing things.
Well, we figure it's also easier for people to have like a clean version because they can just not listen to the profanity part. And listen to the discussion part, and now they don't have to worry about
because we used to
intermixing.
Yeah, because we used to just mix it in, kind of like garnish. You know, we just kind of threw some pepper, just kind of peppered some curse words into our sentences. But then you don't know. You don't know when it's coming.
Take like one of those curse mills, you know, and you
just kind of grind it up.
You take
fresh curses.
Take the little peppercorns.
Yeah. You know, sometimes you need a little more. Sometimes you need a less.
You don't want stale curses on your podcast.
No, it's got to be fresh. Fresh ground shits.
First one. All right.
So we got some news for this week. For starters, we gotta give a shout out to John. John, who will only disclose his first name, but he sent us a letter. He's a kid. He wants to make games. He's a fan of our stuff, and he actually sent us a letter through the actual physical mail.
And we didn't even tell anybody how to do that, so we're not even sure actually how it.
How did you do it, John?
He's very crafty. So that was super cool.
That's incredible. Yeah. But now we're all fans of John.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So now it's sort of a mutual fandom kind of a thing. So that was super cool. And now we've debated, should we be telling people about our P.O. box and stuff? I don't know.
Do you guys want to ship us stuff?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do we want you to ship us stuff?
Yeah. But then there's this thing where we got to then go to the post office and get it.
Nah, man.
It sounds like a huge.
But somehow this one actually got to your house.
Yeah, I know. John is very sneaky.
He's very crafty.
Impressive.
Also, John is a very manly name
for a kid. Yeah. John.
What's your name? John.
Yeah. There used to be lots of kids named John.
Yeah.
But in some parts of the world, it would be Yawn. You know?
Yeah.
So, which is a very sleepy name.
I think probably.
Yeah, I did too, actually. I started to yawn a little bit. Actually, I also bet most of our listeners are yawning right now. I mean,
what's your name?
If we just make if we make a yawn noise, will it just trigger a sort of a yawn chain reaction through everyone listening?
It was really funny. I read last week that dogs apparently can catch yawns from humans and also from each other. So I looked at Coco and I yawned at her. She just looked at me like an idiot. I was like,
she's like, I don't think so. Yeah. The great thing about having the name Yawn, though, is if somebody asks you what your name is, you just yawn. You don't even have to tell them.
Yeah. It's like an onomatopoeia.
You just yawn and then they yawn, and it's kind of like they're saying, wait, I know what your name is.
Is yawn an onomatopoeia? It is.
Yeah.
Although everyone yawns differently.
I love onomatopoeias. They're like the best thing.
Yeah. All right. So next up in the news, Sam went for a run with our producer, Fat Bard.
I got a bone to pick, Patrick. So Patrick is our producer, Fat Bard. And
he's one half of Fat Bard.
He did all the sound of music for all of our games. And
he also did the sound of music.
Yeah.
He's very old.
He's very old.
Yes.
And he and I occasionally go for runs together, and usually we train for a little 5K.
How occasionally?
Extremely.
Well, we try to do 2 or 3 5Ks a year.
Okay. And how many times do you run before each of those 5Ks?
Usually 2 or 3 times. Week before.
So rarely is probably a better word than occasionally.
Yes.
Cool.
And
that's about how often I run too.
He reached out and he's like, hey, it's been a while. We should get back into this, exercise thing. So we're doing a Memorial Day run here in St. Louis. And it's on next Monday, and both of us are horribly out of shape because we've been running. So he was like, "Why don't you come stop by and we'll go for a run?" So I said, "Cool, Patrick, I'll do that." So I come by at 7 a.m. Monday morning.
It's a good time to run.
It's good,
nice
and beautiful out, nice and cool.
It was really nice this
St. Louis is
past week.
Absolutely beautiful right now. And we go for a run, and we're in Patrick's neighborhood, so I have no idea where we are. This is important note. So we're running for about 15 minutes or so. Patrick's like, "How long do you think it's been since we left?" I said, "I think about 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. And he's like, me too. I think we could keep going.
I assume you guys are having this chill conversation while you're running.
Oh yeah. It wasn't like a.
Did you stop and build a sundial so you could figure out?
No, I think we should have, because so we're running, and Patrick says, okay, I think we can keep going. I think we'll just take this next road, which is one that loops back around to the house. So I'm like, cool, this sounds great. So we're running, and then Patrick's like, oh, I think we must have passed that road a while back. And I was like, what do you mean passed the road a while back? and it turns out we had missed the turn while running very slowly by a street sign. And so we ended up, I think our goal was to run for like 25 minutes, which is sort of most 5Ks, if you're in relatively good shape, you could do in between like 30, 35 minutes or so. So we figured if we can run 25 minutes.
If you can mostly make it,
then
then
it's fine.
You'll
You can
figure out the rest
yeah.
during
race
the
day.
race.
And turns out we ran for 45 minutes by the time we got back home. So yeah, I'm a little peeved at Patrick.
Why are you peeved? Maybe he was just tricking you into doing more
He was
exercise.
like, I know Sam's not going to train for real, so I got to trick
Double
him.
it up on him.
Make
because
him-
Sam has this whole like, I'll just do 3/4 of a 5K philosophy because that'll be sufficient for then 5K day. He's probably like, that. I just don't personally believe that's sufficient, but Sam will never trust my judgment.
Yeah,
So I'm just gonna-
you can't convince him. You got to trick him.
Yeah, you got to trick him.
Yeah.
Well, Adam and I were talking about this yesterday. Actually, I have this quote on my whiteboard that says, "How can I outwit me?" Because
Apparently, just have Fat Bard do it.
yeah, we just have friends.
Yeah,
do it.
don't worry about trying to do it yourself. Just bring Fat Bard.
Yeah, it's a lot trickier to trick yourself because you know the tricks that you are using. Probably,
It's like tickling yourself. Doesn't work.
that's true.
Yeah. But what's fun is if you add a like a 1/10 of a second delay to it. There's a machine someone built where they're testing this. So it's a little foot pedal thing that you twist with your hand, and it rubs a brush on your foot, and it randomly delays it. It's a mechanical thing. Randomly delays the brush rubbing by like 1/4 of a second to 3/4 of a second, and then it tickles again. Because you can no longer.
Wait.
Yeah.
So you can't tickle yourself with an object either. If it,
No, it has to be delayed in a way that you can't tell when you're gonna get tickled.
I've tried this.
What?
Yeah, try tickling
Tickling is stupid.
I mean, I know I can't tickle myself, but I assumed that if I like used a feather or something that I
No.
could tickle myself.
No.
But you're saying I could, but only if when my hand moves, it doesn't move at the exact same time.
That's because there's that thing that your brain does where anything that you're holding, your brain views as an extension of your body.
You're like, oh, it feathers me now.
I'm part feather
Right.
now.
But
I'm
why
a
does
featherman.
ticklish? Why is tickling?
Why?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. But
It's a
hey,
weird
There's no value to it. All it does is make it really hard to like get a massage and stuff.
maybe it's like, when like a fly lands on you so that you jump and try to get it off, Maybe it's for
So-
bugs.
So you're saying if I like glue a fly to my fingertip,
Uh-huh. Go on.
Yeah.
and then poke myself with it,
Well, don't poke too hard.
but just a little bit, right? Just
Obviously,
like a gentle poke.
this is a living fly who will be unharmed during
Obviously,
this.
we don't want
because,
to harm
you don't
animals
harm
during
a
this
fly.
podcast. Yeah. So then I just like get it. I just get it close enough that his little legs can touch. my
Yeah,
skin,
that would
right?
tickle.
And you'd
So
be
that
like,
would tickle
"Ooh."
because even though my finger is doing it, sort of.
Because your finger is not 8 fly legs or however many they're like.
Yeah.
6 fly legs. They're an insect.
I think
That's 4.
tickling is for fly combat. I think that's what it's for.
Interesting.
So, all right. So we got a couple more news items. One is, so I have a very spooky one.
Ooh.
So I was driving home last night from picking up Coco. I'm driving through the neighborhood.
What time
It's
is it?
pitch black. It's like 9:30 p.m.
This is with Coco in the car.
Coco's in the car. She's sleeping though because she's tired. And I'm going through this completely dark area, and all of a sudden I see this woman just like walking through the darkness.
Was she like wearing a white?
She was wearing a
Wedding gown?
white dress, right? And I was like, "Holy shit!" Because there's no lights, and she's walking really weird, like stumbling kind of, and she looks kind of young. And then I realized she doesn't have a face. But then I realized she doesn't have a head either, or arms, or legs, or a body, and it's because I made her up. The end.
I was so excited. I thought it was going to be like a sheet in the wind or something, you know?
No, I just made the whole thing up.
All right, next
oh,
news.
man.
I was starting to get some
That was real
chills.
good.
You got me. You outwitted me, Seth.
Yeah.
You fat birded
No,
me.
I did see a woman walking around, but she was just a regular woman.
We got zagged on real
Yeah.
hard.
How dare you?
All
I
right,
gave
so
you my
listen.
trust.
Listen, the Shenana Jam. It's a thing.
It's coming up.
It's a game jam that we are hosting, and it's coming up this weekend. So if you haven't abandoned your family yet, now's the time because you're gonna need a full weekend
I find
to
it's
do
good
this.
to abandon your family at least once per year, specifically on Memorial Day to jam with us.
Yeah, specifically just only during that time frame, and at no other
Never
time.
again. Also,
Until the next
also
one.
warn them before you do it.
Right.
Yes. So we now have 200, almost 270 people signed up for this thing.
There's 207. There's 70. 270.
Yeah.
What?
It's 200 and something.
When did that happen?
Mostly
It's
over the
been
last day.
been escalating rapidly. We're getting like 20 a day now because our good buddies over at Yo-Yo Games, the creators of Game Maker, they threw us a bone. We sent them so we had been talking with them, and they were like, we want to get more involved in community stuff. You know, we want Game Maker to be kind of like at the core of all these cool community events. And so they just said, you know, if there's anything happening, just keep us in the loop.
This was a couple months ago, right?
This was, a few months back. So we started doing this jam, and I'm like, we got to find some sponsors or something. Like we got
For some
to,
reason.
we got to like rope some more people into this thing.
Well, the goal was just to get more people. Our
Or it
initial goal was
wasn't
50
sponsors.
people, right?
Yeah.
Our initial goal for the Shannon Jam was 50 people.
It's 100 people, I think.
Was it 100?
Yeah.
And then we started getting there, and we were like, well, I guess we could get some more.
Yeah. We're like, how can we make this thing bigger? So, so we just sent a message to Yo-Yo Games, and we're like, hey, we got this jam thing going on. If you guys want to get involved in some way, just let us know. And they just casually came back and they were like, what if we put the Shenana Jam logo inside the Game Maker Studio 2 carousel? So whenever literally anybody boots up Game Maker for this week, they'll see a link to the Shenana Jam with our logo and everything else.
And so if you do it right now,
Yeah. If you open
That's
up
what
Game
you're
Maker
gonna
Studio
see.
2, you'll see a link to the Shenana Jam. So they helped out with that, and so we were going from like 5 people a day trickling into the jam to now about 20 a day.
Yeah.
So that has been tremendously helpful. So it's looking like we may end up hitting about 300
What?
people. So
That's unreal. Well, we have a kick-off event on Friday night at about 5 p.m. CST, 7 p.m.
5 p.m. CST.
5 p.m. CST, and then a kick
Down.
So kick off and then a kick down.
yeah,
On
kick
Sunday
off,
night.
kick down.
We'll just do a little brief recap, and all this will be handled through Twitch, or I guess through YouTube Live. I think is the word we're going
I
to do.
believe so. Yeah.
So we'll be
We're
testing some of that
schedule
stuff.
those things or something.
Yeah, we're kind
We'll
of figuring.
figure that
This is
out.
our first rodeo, so hopefully there's no technical problems.
Hopefully we don't get bucked
But
off.
to be clear, this is actually a game jam, not a rodeo.
It's true.
Yeah, this is not our first game jam, but it is our first rodeo jam.
But right, no,
but
it isn't,
without the
though.
rodeo part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The rodeo is later. We're gonna do that.
Yeah, so if you've been on the fence about doing this or not, hop on the bandwagon, because this cruise bandwagon ship is blasting
sail-
off.
It's for those of you who don't know what a game jam is, or whatever. It is just real quick. It's a 48-hour long event where at the beginning of the event we will give you a theme, and you have 48 hours to make a video game that matches that theme. And if you've never made a game before, perfect. This is the perfect time for you to start doing it. We have a bunch of resources on our jams page, which if you go to podcast.bscotch.net, just click on the giant thing that says the Butterscotch Shenana Jam. That'll take you to the jam page, and we have a FAQ there with all kinds of links to tools you can use and all kinds of advice on how to do it.
And Seth also put together a quick Game Maker series actually this weekend using our new fancy green screen.
Yeah, we got a green screen.
So he's now hovering in the corner
like a ghost.
like a ghost.
yes,
Like a woman in a spooky white dress. And that takes you through making a really simple game. And you should totally do it, because all of us got our starts making games through game jams. And we actually routinely just get our new ideas from game jams, and we just use them to prototype stuff. I think our goal for this weekend is to experiment with a few sort of pieces of tech. So it's going to be, they're always fun. They're always extremely educational. So if you're still on the fence, get off it.
Get off the fence, but just be sure to get off
On the
in
right
the
side.
right direction,
Yeah,
which
which is
is
on the jam
into the
side.
jam. Okay, and also this last week we got all of our podcast episodes uploaded to
We
YouTube.
did. I want to clarify a few things about the jam also.
Yeah.
Because we have a Discord channel. You should jump into it if you think about doing the jam. It's already pretty active. People are talking about it. And some things have come up, mostly some confusion around time zones and whether or not this is a competition.
Yeah, so it's not a competition.
It's not a competition, just for funsies.
Yeah.
There is the judging part, but that's mostly because we don't know how many games are going to end up appearing, and there might be a lot, and we want to be able to kind of showcase the most fun ones that come out of it,
But
And we
without
need to-
having to potentially play 200 games.
right. We need to be able to find them, and so we're the judging part is to kind of crowdsource finding of kind of the coolest games that come out of this. And also so that you can get some external feedback as the person who made something for your next jam. So you kind of know what are the things that people got pumped about or didn't get pumped about the thing that you made. But it's purely, it's friendly only. It's not supposed to be, it's not like going to the Google Play Store.
Yeah.
And launching
You
a
should
game.
give honest feedback, but give helpful feedback.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So not a competition. It's just for funsies.
All right, what's the time zone situation? Because this is a global.
This is a global event. So the jam starts at 5 p.m. Central Time.
Because that's where we are.
That's where we are.
We're hosting it. So
Yep.
we get to tell what time it is.
Yeah.
But really it's on the internet, so I'm not really sure.
Right.
If it even
So
matters
if you
that
go
we're
to the
hosting
jam's
it.
page, there's a countdown clock that
Okay.
is counting down to the moment the jam starts. The jam starts at one time, period. So it's not like
One time period,
one time.
like medieval.
One time, end of sentence.
But BC though.
So we had a bunch of people trying to like convert it, like converting the countdown clock, Don't be doing that. Just like when you go to the jam page, it'll tell you a countdown clock, and then the jam page will also tell you the time that the jam starts, where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, just look at the clocks on the jam page.
You're good
and
to
it'll tell
go.
you. Yeah. And definitely do not convert the countdown clock, because that's not how countdown clocks work. So
But there were people who were saying that they're going to get kind of screwed because, like, for them, it starts at like 6 a.m. on Saturday and then ends at, 6 a.m. Monday morning.
But really, that's perfect. Because during that 48-hour period,
Explain.
Okay, so here's the thing. During the 48-hour period of the jam, it's actually 50 hours. We added a couple extra hours on the end for safety. But during this jam, everybody has 2 nights, right? It's a 48-hour period. So everybody's going to have 2 8-hour periods of sleep. And those periods are just going to land differently for different people. But like if the jam ends at 6 o'clock in the morning for you, then just submit the game before you go to bed.
Right.
And
You're
then
saying you
you're
haven't
good.
lost any time because
Yeah,
yeah,
everybody has the same amount of time. It's just going to
The difference being,
everywhere.
though, where the time is, because a Friday night is very different than a Saturday, right? So there is a question, which I think is a fair one, that we've already argued about. I just want to argue about it publicly on the podcast,
sure.
which is, why not just say it starts at 5 p.m. Friday, your time?
It's
we do
mostly.
We
We can't do that
because the thing is,
using
it's not a
itch.
competition.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter. It's about having a good time and making a game.
Yeah.
If someone's dishonest and gives themselves an extra 6 hours because they started it 6 hours early,
Who cares?
who gives a shit?
yeah. It's mostly about trying to sort of have a blazing fire of passion all
Yeah,
at
yeah.
once. So
Which I do get, except that those people who are on a really off time zone, because when we do the kickoff, that's going to be at 5 a.m. for some people. They're not going to wake up for that. They're going to miss it regardless.
yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? And the bulk of the event,
Well,
because
sometimes some people might stay up.
some people, yeah, but we're still going to do our part at the same time, regardless, right? So
Yeah.
so that part's still going to be there. But if they get to start get their team together and start on their Friday night and kick off the weekend going into the jam, to me that seems a lot better.
It does seem better.
The
question is, can we do that with the tool?
I don't
we
know.
don't need to do it with the
to me.
tool. We
That,
can just
to me,
say-
that feels too sloppy.
We can just
You
say it starts at 5 p.m. your time. Here's when the events happen, right?
All to say, we'll
In
argue about
absolute
this
time.
off the podcast and figure it out.
Yeah. No, I think no. But no, we won't, because for this jam, it's starting at 5 p.m. Central Time. That's it.
For the record, I want to say I disagree.
Yeah, but it's
But
okay.
Seth's in charge.
Okay, because we've already told 300 people that it's starting at 5 p.m. CST.
We can also just email all of them, though. So it's really no big deal.
True.
That's you bickering.
All right.
You bickering married couple?
All right. Let's get on to some questions. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I was saying was all of our podcast episodes are now up on
yeah.
YouTube. So
Yeah.
if you want to listen to those,
Go scope them out.
you can. All right. So let's move on to some questions. These questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. If you want to ask questions, get on there and do it. But you can use your Bscotch ID or you can ask anonymously. Either way, we don't care. But just make it a good one. All right, so first question, I got a pair of questions first. It's about voices. First question comes from Arcarnix, who asks, is it Sam's voice saying/screaming, "It's so big" in the embiggening screen? Are there any stories behind making that screen and sound?
It's not my voice.
It's Fat Bard.
It's Fat Bard, actually.
Heavily
It's
distorted.
Patrick specifically.
Yeah. And as far as the making of that screen, what had happened is we decided on what the evolution was going to look like. In other words, how the visuals play out. And then Seth randomly because we didn't have any music or sound effects for it. And so Seth just threw some dubstep in there when it
Yeah.
turned on, just because he thought it would be a hilarious joke.
Do you remember
And
which one it was?
It threw some Skrillex in
It
there.
was
but
the-
I clipped it to the point where
She goes, "Oh my god!"
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
and so he's smiling and giggling to himself, and he's like, "Hey."
I just had my headphones on. I was working on this. And I
Look at
didn't tell
this.
Sam about it.
And so he plays it, and I just lose it. And then we're like, well, I guess we had to put that in now.
Yeah.
And so we did. And then
Well, because I mean, it's inspired by Pokemon, right? Where like it's like, oh, it's evolving, and then it's just like, beep, 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 you know,
Yeah.
like some weird, just kind of general.
I think that was a Final Fantasy music.
Yeah,
but
whatever.
whatever. Video game
Yeah,
music.
just generic,
So-
triumphant video game
But
music.
the other difference we made was that there were just beams that were flying in the background originally. And then I think Seth just put, I don't remember why, but you just put white text in there that says all sorts of randomized stuff like vanilla is the best flavor.
Chocolate is better than vanilla.
Chocolate's better than vanilla. Just all sorts of these ridiculous little short one-liners that look like, when you're just watching it, they look like beams flying
But
past.
if you screen cap it, you'll
Yeah.
see the.
There's
you'll see
tons
the
of
actual-
little weird phrases in there, so I don't know if anybody
Which
knows
has
that.
none of them have anything to do with the pet. None of them have
No.
anything to do with the fact that this is a screen about like evolving your creature.
No, it's just nuts.
It's just total nonsense.
So there's your stories.
And the fun part about it too is that people always screen cap that because like it's a proud moment. Like, yeah, I evolved my pet, and they screen cap it, and then later they look at it and they're like, what the fuck? Which is basically what we did.
Layers of surprise.
Yeah. Next question comes from Devo. Since listening to the podcast, I stumbled across a Bamley in Crashlands and distinctly heard your voice. I don't know whose voice. Someone's voice. What was your process for discovering what sounds a creature would make, and how did you bring those sounds to life?
Who was the family?
The Bamley was, I believe it was Zach from Fat Bard. But Adam, Sam, and I each did some voices for some of the creatures. I think all of the Savannah creatures come from out elsewhere, like from Fat Bard and their associates. Adam did the Gallum in the
Oh, yeah,
Tundra.
that's right.
Sam did the Snorble.
Oh, yeah. That's still my favorite one. It screams like a maniac.
Yep. I did the Liff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember Patrick did the Glazer.
The
Because
Glazer.
he used a paper towel tube and screamed into it.
Yeah, he just goes, woo!
I
Yeah.
think that was my favorite noise, actually.
So, as far as sort of figuring out what sounds they're supposed to make, we generally, I mean, after we make the creature, we have kind of a sense of what its personality is like. So, you know, when we sent in the Wampet, and we're just like, yeah, it's just kind of this dumb, like cow hippo thing.
Yeah.
You know? So just kind of make
it
some
that.
kind of like moo grunt kind of sounds. And then we would have a little bit back and forth, but typically, you know, whatever came out the first time, we're just like, yeah,
Ship
that's
it.
close enough, right?
Yeah, we try to cede as much authorial control over to whoever's in charge of whatever they're actually producing. So
Yeah,
in the case of that-
micromanaging is just.
yeah,
worst.
I don't know if we ever requested sound change. I mean, we requested maybe like 5 sound changes over the course of the entirety of Crashlands, and there's hundreds of them. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty much on Fat Bard to just do it, and they delivered.
Yeah, we're not the experts.
Except
otherwise
the
we
Zug.
would do it.
The Zug was the I loved.
There's
the
a
Zug.
few
I
people
loved
who
it.
got to play the alpha back in October
and the
of
beta even.
2015.
I think it was there in the beta
Was it-
too. I
was
think we
it?
switched it like mid beta.
Because people came across the Zug, and it used to like just scream.
It just went. If I may, it went.
And it was hilarious the first time because you're like, what the fuck is this
Because
thing?
it also opens up its mouth when it does. Like it really looks like it's just kind of doing this weird scream.
Yeah.
But then after, especially when you're, because for most players when they first encounter them, they're too weak to fight one, and so this thing just like screams at them and then murders them, and so it's this kind of hilarious thing. But when that happens a few more times, you can imagine that the rage starts to build, and then that grating baby screech noise is just
Well,
terrible.
here's the thing. I loved that sound so much that I used a Zug as a pet, even though it was one of the worst pets.
Didn't you
just
also
because-
in World of Warcraft use with one of those stupid birds because they scream super duper loud?
Yeah, and they disarm people.
Like take
Yeah.
their arms off or remove their.
So
weapon.
like they take their weapon away. Yeah, there was as a hunter you could tame animals from the wild, and there were these birds that just like, screeched the whole time they were fighting, and then they would just disarm you about once a minute. It's like you'd be fighting one, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, you can't hit it. It's just screaming in your face. That was the best.
Well, you said it was a great psychological tactic
It
because you
sounds
stick
like
it on someone, and of course they can hear the sound effects from it.
Yeah.
And so if it's a wolf or something, it's like, "Rah," but if it's this bird, it's like, ah! so it's like, what is
So
happening?
this reminds me. So we have I played Unreal Tournament on Sunday night with some of our buddies. We have a Discord channel called Unreal Buddies, and every now and then we'll get together and play Unreal Tournament Game of the Year edition from 1999.
It's really good.
Yeah, and there's this one weapon. I believe it's just called the Impact Hammer.
Oh yeah,
And it's like the weapon you use when you have no other options.
It's your unarmed.
Oh, you got to
I
get
guess,
up
or-
close, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
thump
You
people
like,
with
you hold it. It's like a
like a
piston.
jackhammer sort
It's
of?
a piston with two giant air tanks on it, and so you click and you hold the mouse, and it slowly reels back the piston, and then at a certain point, it's sort of at maximum, velocity. And then if you just get up to somebody, and if you just touch them with it, you don't even have to release the mouse button. You just touch them with the piston, and then it just explodes them. But you have to get close, and the whole time you're holding it, it's making this horrible kind of like grating noise. And so when it's actually the most
it
terrifying,
scary?
yeah, it's the most terrifying thing because Fat Bard was using this thing almost exclusively just to fuck with people. And you always knew when he was coming because you'd hear this like hear this sound, and then all of a
It's like
sudden,
being hunted in the
all of a
dark or
sudden he
something.
pops out of a corner. You're like, "Ah!" And you're like, get away from me, like you're just trying to run away the whole time. I think there's a lot to it. There's a lot to this psychological warfare tactic.
Definitely.
It doesn't work as well in a single player game when you're only fighting against AI.
Yeah.
So my Zug approach was not probably the best, but what are you gonna do? All right. So next question comes from Necronomicon 2000. So this is the sort of more updated version of the Necronomicon. Still a little bit
A
old.
little outdated still.
Yeah, but better than the previous one, which was 30,000 years old or something.
Yeah.
Hey, so I'm getting ready to graduate high school and was wondering if you guys had any suggestions for a summer job. What would you suggest that pays somewhat decently?
Well, congrats on graduating from high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That pays decently as a high schooler. We did lifeguarding. That paid pretty well.
Lifeguarding is good.
Anything that requires just a tiny bit of training or skill.
You do
I'd
need to
recommend.
get CPR certification, and you also need training to be able to know how to like get a person who is dying out of the water. So I mean, if you're cool with being in a position where someone's life hangs in the balance, but also you're being paid around a minimum wage, that's a good option.
And
But
you probably have to pay for your certification ahead of time, presumably.
yeah, it's
So
not
then-
too bad, but
Then your whole summer of minimum wage probably.
But here was the great thing about being a lifeguard. And so here's the thing. I don't know if this is the case in all sort of pool environments, but being a lifeguard, everybody kind of recognizes that it's not super thrilling because you just sit in the chair and you're just watching people. And so you're supposed to take pretty regular breaks, right? So you sit in the chair for like 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever, and then you come down for like 15 to 30 minutes while people rotate through. So you actually have the most downtime out of pretty much like any job ever.
Yeah.
Which means you can do other stuff like read books,
learn how to program.
learn how to program, bring your laptop
Yeah.
to the pool, into the
I
break room.
would just work in the break room or read stuff.
Yeah.
Or just chat with people, hang out.
I read tons of stuff. Yeah, the best was when we'd have like 5 lifeguards on duty for the day, but then the weather's really shitty or something. And so basically nobody comes to the pool.
So you have
So you
one
only
guard
need
up.
1 or 2 guards up. They're up for 15 minutes and then they come down for an hour for a break. You go back over 15 minutes, come
Those
down
are
for
great.
Those were the best.
Though people occasionally poop on the sidewalks, which is terrible. Or in the
Yeah,
showers.
that's a thing.
What?
Yep. People just always poop
Yeah, you get
and
enough
stuff.
people together
and someone's gonna
wearing
shit on
nothing,
something.
wearing nothing but like swimming trunks, and just suddenly people are shitting on things. I don't know.
So it's not all it's not all sunshine and roses. There's a lot of poop involved and a lot of clouds also.
You also have kids who are like, I'm going to do a trick, and they'll like jump off of a concrete slab onto another concrete slab, and they're like, I'm
Which,
wounded.
To
and
be
then
fair, it was a neat trick.
it was pretty cool. But then you as a
Incredible.
lifeguard, you got to be like, well, there's all your life juice is coming out, so now I got
Right,
to
put it back in or
now I
something.
got to
or-
staple that knee closed or whatever. So, but it's all part of your first aid training. It's just part of the job. So.
So I enjoyed that. I think if you can get a job that does require some sort of skill, because I mean, being like learning CPR is super useful, even though we had to pay for it anyways. So
Yeah, I mean, it is valuable
yeah.
knowledge. But if your goal is to get paid reasonably, I'm not really sure what the right move is there.
Well,
actually.
it's also the question is, do you need money now
or later.
or later? Because
Right.
if you're okay now, then just spend your summer teaching yourself how to program because that'll pay off in dividends in the long term.
Or any long-term skill, frankly. Calculus, stats.
Yeah.
Those are harder to sell than programming, though. Like, literally, everybody wants programmers.
Yeah.
Everybody in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like magic. And so they'll pay you.
Because like we discussed, programming is basically wizardry.
Yeah.
So
that'd be a good one.
So yeah, I think it's kind of a question of you have to just use your judgment. Do you need money right now, or do you need a lot of money later?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so those are your options basically. All right. So next question comes from Space Bat. Space Bat says, "I've been playing a lot of Stardew Valley recently. So since you may or may not be making a farming game, which characters will I be able to romance?" So this is an interesting question.
We talked about romance the other day, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting to point out here that for some reason, farming game is synonymous with romancing people in people's minds.
I don't think you can romance in Farm Simulator 2017.
Have you played
I'm
it?
too busy driving combines and stuff.
That's the thing, actually. It's like most of the time you're driving the combine, you're
But the
on the
rest of the
phone
time-
with all of your various,
Like hotties.
all your,
Then you have to like go to Farmers Only or whatever that dating site
Yeah.
is for
Yep.
farmers.
Yep.
But the fake version of that lives
yeah,
in
most of the
game.
game is actually you in the cab, like looking at sort of like farmer Tinder or whatever
Right.
on your phone and like swiping left or right and then
Right.
sending love letters.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a very
That-
big following.
It does actually have a huge following. So I guess that must be why. I assumed it was about the farming aspect, but it's actually probably the
No, it's just
It's a
that
lifestyle
farming is
game.
one of the few things that provides enough downtime, you know,
Right.
sitting in the cab of that combine and stuff,
Yeah.
where you can also romance people a lot.
right.
Yeah.
So farmers lead very scandalous lives.
Yeah, I
But
think,
in Stardew Valley though, you don't even have a combine. So like, you know how?
why would anyone want to date you?
Yeah. So what?
Yeah, and in
doesn't make any
Stardew Valley,
sense.
you go out, you pull like 16 weeds, and you're like, oh God, I can't go on anymore. And then you go
Yeah.
to bed at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, you're like you're super weak. You get
Yeah.
fatigued easily.
You've
You
been
can't
wait-
even.
you've been
get
working
in
on
better
that-
shape.
You've been
But-
working at a cubicle for your whole life.
Yeah, but you don't even get in better shape, you know? Because you
That
can
is
work
true.
on your farm, Stardew Valley, for years and be just as weak
And
as
still
you
you're
were
like,
the day
oh
you
shit, I
started.
pulled 4 weeds.
Well, it's actually
I'm out.
it's from getting better tools, I think, that makes you less weak.
Right. Well, you're
Your own-
as weak. You just have, which is actually true, I guess, that
Sure.
better tools help, but also you should get stronger.
You should, because I don't know if any of our listeners are farmers or have been around farmers, but those people
They're jacked.
they're human machines.
Yeah.
They will work for 18 hours a day and they don't even give a shit.
Also, if you ever high five a farmer, be very careful because their hands are like,
Their hands are like bowling balls.
real careful.
Yeah, I would advise don't even go for a handshake, just do a fist bump. Even that's really dangerous, but
Honestly,
have a fist in that
you
afterward.
shouldn't approach a farmer. You should only just make eye contact from 15 yards
actually
away.
it's probably the best move.
And then put your
Because-
head down to signal submission before
Yep.
they kill you.
You should
Yeah,
treat
don't
treat it-
smile at them, right? Because they'll treat it as a
This is-
display of aggression.
Right.
Show me your teeth.
But yeah, they're fucking strong. So I guess if we had a farming game,
Mm-hmm.
also known as a romance simulator,
Yeah.
Right.
who are you gonna romance?
I think anybody you want.
Yeah.
What
I
if-
guess,
can you
what is
romance-
romancing for?
What if-
in the context of a game?
Here's the question. What if in the background, so you're trying to romance these people, right? But the interesting thing about Stardew Valley,
They're trying to romance you.
or they're trying to romance each other.
Mhm.
So you gotta,
You're gonna love
it's like,
quadrangle.
yeah, it's like playing the real world dating game where
Right.
you have to figure out if someone likes you or if they're dating someone else. How
And then you
could
gotta
be a homewrecker.
Right, then you
know?
gotta you gotta intercept.
Yeah.
So you'll talk to one NPC and they're like, yeah, I'm taking Bob on a date over there,
Mhm.
and you're like, I don't think so. And you're like, would you like to go do this other thing instead at the same time?
Bob's like, I don't know. Jerry asked me on a date. And you're like, what about this shiny seashell I found? And Bob's like, yeah.
Yeah,
And
all
then
right.
it turns out, like, then you're in a relationship for a while. It turns out that Bob was married the whole time.
yeah, and
He
even
never
worse,
told you, so how could you have known? And then Bob's spouse comes and murders you.
Whoa.
Yeah. And also,
It's very complicated.
And also, there's this kind of this high level social commentary going on because the only way, of course, to win people's affection is to give them gifts.
Right.
But then it turns out that the only people you have the option of dating are just materialist douchebags who only want you because of your wealth.
Yeah.
Right.
You know? And like as soon as those gifts stop flowing, they're just like, I'm out. I'm done with this.
And it turns out the only way to win is to not play.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So that'd be our romance game.
coming summer
Spoilers.
2018.
I kind of want to make this game now.
I would love to make a romance game.
It'd be really. entertaining.
Be hilarious.
Let's do it.
Isn't that how to full bird game? How to full girlfriend or whatever? The pigeon dating simulator? I haven't played it, but I saw it all over the place.
Yeah.
A pigeon dating simulator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might go check it
I think
out.
it's
Pigeons
not,
have
it's,
very elaborate
it's
courtship
pigeons
rituals.
dating people, though, I think, right? Or is it pigeons
No, I
dating
think
pigeons?
you're a pigeon also.
But you're a pigeon. Are you dating other pigeons, or are you a pigeon dating people?
You're dating other pigeons.
Okay.
Just pigeons everywhere.
It's just
It wouldn't make
different
sense really in any direction, but I think that one makes the most sense, probably.
Yeah. All right. Next question comes from Degeki. Question for each person. You ready?
All of the people?
Each person in the whole world.
Jeez.
Oh, it's gonna take a while.
This is going to be a longer podcast than we planned.
Well,
What
about a
are
few minutes,
the
that's fine.
steps, tools, trainings, tricks, guidelines, etc., that you use to become an expert in a hurry? Sam, I think you have.
It's also like 10 questions per person.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So basically, how do you get good at a thing quickly?
How do you get good?
How do you get good?
Okay, how do you get
If
good?
you want to get
Well,
good,
quickly is an interesting one.
Yeah.
is it though?
Well, there's the question of can you get good at something quickly?
If you just define quickly however you want.
Well, how can you become rapidly less shitty?
Okay, that's better. I can do that. So
yeah.
there's the concept of deliberate practice. There's a book called Peak, actually, which just answers this question. So I'm just going to direct you to that book.
P-E-A-K, not
But then I would,
not P-E-E-K.
Yeah, P-E-A-K.
P-E-E.
I can say that.
If you get that double E peak, that's probably a very different genre of book. It's probably a farming book.
Farming romance novel. Yeah. So
but I'd recommend only reading like the first chapter of that book because it takes an entire novel to explain that you should practice.
It's a
it
sentence
does.
book.
Well, there's another
It's a
book
little
called
lengthy.
Mastery by Robert Greene.
I assume that
It's
also
probably
has like a
similar.
one sentence takeaway.
Similar. It
Yeah.
basically says
I'm really getting tired of these books.
it basically says practice deliberately, and that's it. So if you're like, okay, I suck at drawing. Okay, it'd be one thing to just go and just make a lot of shitty drawings with no sort of aim. The other thing to do would be just pick a particular thing. So you're like, all right, I'm really bad at drawing. I'm just going to draw my face every day for the next 4 years
And try to get it as close to life
I'm
as
going to try to
possible.
make it look like my face. We'll see what happens. And everything I look up is just going to be about how to make my face look like my face when I draw it.
Mhm.
And,
And then every time you draw something, you now reevaluate it and ask, what did I fuck up here? What can
Sometimes
I
you're
do
like, okay, this
tomorrow?"
time I drew Morgan Freeman.
Right.
So that's wrong.
definitely not my
need to-
face.
Keep working on it.
So
This drawing
so-
does have a nice voice, though.
Yeah.
Mhm. Beautiful. So buttery smooth. So what you do is you just slowly pick a thing, a very narrow category of the broad thing that you're trying to do. If it's game development, for example, if you're like, all right, because the reality is that, of course, putting art into games and animating stuff is actually completely different than designing a really good game. And they do go hand in hand to a degree. But the reality is you'll see a lot of people, and we make this joke a lot about people who prefer building engines over building video games because they get stuck sort of in the programming mindset of just making cool technology rather than making the technology that serves the very specific purpose of making a game. So the whole point is that with deliberate practice that you pick a thing to do, very narrowly define that thing, break it down into really small pieces, and then just practice. So put a lot of time in
And
to,
don't worry about the
particular-
rest.
yeah,
You
and don't
just
about
worry
this.
about that one thing. Don't even ask, is this getting me closer to the bigger, nebulous, completely not understandable goal? Just take that goal first, break into pieces, take the one smallest tiny piece, and tackle it. Stop worrying about
Yep.
stuff.
So there's an idea of what's called a general skill. A general skill is something that is actually made up of a bunch of sub skills. So in drawing, it's like line work, for example, is its own skill that you have to develop in order to, at some point, have a really high level general skill of drawing. Perspective work is a whole nother thing too. So you could start them in a particular order. You can follow tons of books on them. But the reality is if you break these larger, extremely nebulous things down into really narrow categories and then just focus on that until you get that to a point where you're like, okay, I'm like either seeing marginal benefit from continuing or I've gotten enough that I feel like I'm going to move on to the next skill so that I can move on to just sort of working in a general sense with whatever the medium is.
So when you say put the time in,
Mhm.
what do you mean by that? Because a minute is not a minute. It depends on how you use it.
Right. So I'm
Right.
assuming when I say something like put the time in that you're going to sit down with just that thing and no distractions.
So you're not going to
While
go,
you're doing that
I'm going to quote practice drawing, but then you also have like Battlestar Galactica on and you're going to watch all
Yeah, I would say,
32 seasons.
So when I practice drawing, so I started practicing drawing the last couple of days. Timely question.
It's a good time to start.
Yeah. But these guys can attest I did a self-portrait on Saturday, and then I did a different one on Sunday.
Well, no, you did someone else's portrait.
The joke was that I drew
John Hodgman.
my first self-portrait. I apparently was John Hodgman. The second one actually does look like me. So, but the thing I do is actually put my phone. I put my phone in another room. I just use my watch for a timer, and then my goal is to put in 60 minutes of just pure working on it a day. And if I can do 2 hours, and that's sort of like the ideal scenario. And my first goal is simply to do a bunch of pencil drawings. So again, the narrowness thing, pencil drawings that are focused on drawing from life. So I'm not even cartooning or anything, which is essentially what we do for the games. So drawing from life with pencils, and the goal is to do 20 hours of that.
Yeah.
That's it. And so once I finish the 20 hours, which should be done like next week sometime.
This is 20 hard hours of just doing that thing and not paying attention to anything else.
Then once I finish those 20 hours, then I will reevaluate and say, do I want to do this more, or should I pick, say, composition or something else? Now that I can theoretically draw some stuff with relative ease, what's that like? And the thing is, it still feels like, the first. Actually, I was thinking about this the other day. Do you guys remember, or have you ever watched a kid learn to read, or do you remember learning to read?
Too long ago.
No. Explain.
Well, if you like it, because it's just hard. It's just harder than shit to learn to read.
Yeah, it makes
right?
no sense until it does.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And like you're sitting there and you got your stupid finger underneath a huge, gigantic letter, right? And you're like, "Buh." Right? That's how it starts.
Yeah.
And so the thing to note is that if you have no literacy,
Yeah, you sound it out, and then your brain is like, "What word have I heard that sounds like
right
noises I just made?"
right. You don't even know what the fuck you're reading until you say it.
Yeah.
Right.
Letter by letter.
So the interesting thing is that when I was working on my drawings last night, so it was an hour at the end of the day. I was really tired, but I was just like working on this thing, and it was just hard the whole time. It was a full hour, and it was just really, really hard. And everything I was drawing was relatively garbage. And I was just sort of reflecting on the fact that this stuff, whenever you're doing something that's a new skill, or even in a narrow category, where like it's just this one little piece of this whole general skill, it probably will feel like you're doing a completely shit job most of the time.
Yeah.
Up until basically when it doesn't, right? And when it starts to get easier, but it's still going to be hard. And the reason I compared it to reading is because I think that it's very obvious in reading, and everybody's required to do it. And
most people have gone through that process.
yeah. Well, this thing is like the literacy rate in the United States is really high, and across the developed world it is now. So the thing is, something as difficult as reading, which is extremely difficult to do, actually, we've sort of forced everybody to learn how to do. You have to go do it. We have structure in place for figuring it out. But when it comes to drawing or programming or this other stuff, you get to choose. And I think the difficulty with sort of willingly putting yourself up to be tortured daily,
Of just repeatedly failing at a thing.
Yeah, you
but
want
slightly differently every day.
yeah, you want to talk about like a different general skill.
Yeah.
Just the ability to learn, to self-directedly learn. I think that sort of slightly masochistic tendency there, which is the ability to just sit down and do terrible, just terrible. And especially as an adult, when you know that you're doing terrible, this is slightly different than when you're a kid.
You got to know what your target is. Just that every day, even if you're doing badly, you're still moving in like 180-degree cone.
Well, that's why
toward your
the measurement I put is just that focused time. Because I could do that. I could sit there for 60 minutes and try to draw, The drawing might turn out terrible, but the point is I did the 60 minutes. And so ideally, if I'm approaching that 60 minutes correctly with that deliberate practice idea, then no matter what, if I put the time in, then it should gradually move me forward.
You know what this makes me think of? When I do random world generation in a game, I'll put like one room, like a dungeon room somewhere, and I'll put another dungeon room somewhere else far away, right? And now I need to generate a path between the two. Mm-hmm. But in order to make that path interesting, I give it an incredible amount of randomness. So I'll say, you're going to basically aim at the room that you're trying to get to lay down each node of the path. But then you're going to go in a completely random direction between -90 and +90 degrees, right? So you're going to just kind of, you're just going to move in you're moving a total 180-degree cone that's kind of focused around the direction you're going. And you know what's the crazy thing? It always gets there. Always. Right? So even though you could technically go sideways for like a year, eventually you're still going to actually get there.
Right.
And of course, the more iterations there are, the more likely it is that any given moment you've made a step toward your target, and eventually you just end up there.
Yeah. So I track this. So as far as tools though, I track it in a spreadsheet. That's it. So I put my goal is to do 20 hours, like I said, and my goal is 60 minutes a day. So I just put it in a spreadsheet.
Easy peasy.
That's that.
You just need those.
Done.
You need those iterations.
Yeah.
You're good to
Yeah.
go.
Well, but that's actually not the extent of your systems, because then you also have to have a system at home that allows you to have those 60 minutes of uninterrupted work, right? So now part of your system is actually having an open discussion with your spouse and saying, hey, this is the thing that I'm going to do. Like, make sure that she understands what you're doing and why you need that time, and then arrange for like how you're going to organize your life together to provide that time, right?
Because it's also rough if somebody keeps jumping in and being like, "Hey, you want to do the thing?
Yeah.
Can you cut this grass?"
And you're like, thanks, I just lost the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Great.
Because it also is the case that having somebody pull your focus away from a thing is very expensive in terms of time, because getting your brain recalibrated back into working on the thing, even if somebody takes your focus away for 5 seconds, you do lose like a minute,
At least.
Yeah. So
You have to rebuild the mental framework that you had of what you were working on.
Yep.
So it's you want to make your systems as simple as possible in terms of the thing that you have to actively interact with. So when it comes to like a spreadsheet or something, just do the bare minimum so that itself doesn't create a barrier and a burden. But then otherwise, you need to organize everything about your life to provide that time in a way that doesn't then just give you anxiety in the back of your brain. Right. So that might mean, so for me, that means if I get home, if there's something I want to work on in my evenings, that when I get home, that means I have to take care of chores immediately and get those out of the way. Right. Because once those are done, they no longer are a little anxiety inducing thing in the back of my mind. And so now I can dramatically increase my focus on something. So a lot of it is organizing your social life and your various, especially the tiny little responsibilities you have, because like we all just have a mountain of tiny responsibilities all the time. And if you can just wipe those things out, clean them off the deck, then you can get to
or batch them together in different ways,
right?
Compartmentalize them.
Yep.
Yeah. This is kind of like I have a talk up on YouTube called "Do What You Want." You can find it through our YouTube channel. We've linked to it. And one of the most important things in there is this concept of commitment overflow, where if you say like, I'm going to spend 60 minutes a day doing art, what that means is that every day, if you don't have any other systems built in to sort of manage what that 60 minutes is going to look like, then every day you have to rethink your entire day and figure out how you're going to get those 60 minutes in, right?
Yep.
Which is why most people kind of just fall off the wagon. Like they try to start a new thing. They want to start exercising, practicing something, whatever. They can keep it up for like a week at most. But then the rest of their normal routines of life just kind of like crowd it back out again. And so
you didn't just make a permanent space for that thing.
Yeah. And so sometimes, like if you're spending 2 hours a night watching TV or something, you have to just say, I just don't get to do that now. Right. Because you only have so many hours in a day, and every hour is taken by something already. There's nobody is just sitting around with like just an empty void of 2 hours just floating in the middle of the day. Right. So So you take that time, you say every day from 7 to 8 p.m. or whatever, I'm working on this thing. And that time is sacred. Nothing touches it. Everybody in your life knows. You shut your phone off during that time. Like that is just for that one thing that you're trying to do. So yeah, that's deliberate, very intense, focused practice, and rearrange your life systems to fit.
And for me, the way that I get into a new complicated thing, like learning a new programming language or something, is the way that I do it is a strict R&D phase followed by a strict experimenting and making stuff phase. And it's basically because it's very easy to just kind of like read about how to do stuff and then just do that forever. And it's also very easy just to jump into a thing without knowing anything about it and hoping
just flail for a while.
Just flail and both. I mean, the first one will never get you where you want to go. The second one will get you somewhere, but actually not where you need to go. And then there's of course an alternative, which is to kind of do them both together. Which I think is what most people do. I actually don't like that approach as much because then I feel like I'm constantly switching between ways of thinking and what I'm doing. And so my strict R&D phase is basically find some well-rated book. And even though like you can't learn, and they're usually out of date because it's programming, but find some book that covers the topic decently well by an expert in that thing.
who preferably knows how to talk about things to non-experts.
Right. But even if they do, if you have some transferable knowledge, like some other programming language or something, you can identify the right thing, right? So for me, I'm usually actually trying to find stuff like for programming language from somebody who is an expert trying to talk to other experts, because that way I know like I won't understand a lot of it, but I'll hit all the details that I need to be thinking about. And then I just I take the fire hose of information approach. So it's just I read the whole book and carefully, but also very fast with a lot of kind of skimming, right? But it's always looking for like little details and notes where I know I won't understand all of it and necessarily even a lot of it, but I'll get a cursory overview of the thing that I'm about to go try to do.
So when you start doing it, you're like, I feel like I've seen
exactly.
Some of this
So
before.
now all of a sudden, then I put all that stuff away, and then I go sit down and start with deliberate practice, start actually working on using that stuff that I just had, and of course, then I start building it. And from the very beginning, I'm like, I have no idea how to even fucking start, right? So then I'll still like go back and do a little bit of early R&D, like watch a YouTube video, tutorial or something, to get the ball rolling, and then just start making stuff. And from there, now all of a sudden when I'm hit a moment of confusion, it's much easier to go search for the information because even though I don't know it, I've seen it before. And so now I know the right words, I know how to search, and then I can start to piece it together by doing it.
There's a really big piece of this, which I think is that a lot of people procrastinate doing a thing by preparing for it. And there was this really good, I think it's the War of Art guy, Stephen Pressfield, who I think says that you're given a maximum of 3 books to read on a subject before you have to go do things, because otherwise you're just reading books and you're not actually.
Yeah, I try to read exactly one book on a topic. Yeah. And sometimes 2 if I feel like one is for some reason not, or if I feel like there aren't any good books, then I'll try to take 2 that feel really different so I can feel like I got an actual,
it's important to know, like you're never ready to do anything.
No, you got to get started. Yeah. But for me, it's mostly that, because in the past I always started in a vacuum where I would just be like, I want to learn Python, and I would just like start doing it, right? And yeah, like you can actually get into it and start doing useful stuff, but it's one of those, you end up on the part of that Dunning-Kruger curve or whatever, right? Where you think you know a lot more than you do, and you're doing everything wrong, and you don't know it because you just went flailing first. But if you just get a little bit of an overview from experts who are using the thing properly before you jump in, and not a lot, just enough, so that you have sort of the patterns of thinking and that sort of thing. And I think this is true for anything, not just programming. But you get kind of an overview of just how to think about the problem and then go flail around. It
more
puts you
in a more like, so go flail
more
around
directed
in like a 90-degree cone
exactly,
instead of a 180-degree cone.
Right. So you can still only truly learn by just doing a thing with deliberate practice. But having an overview of what that thing is and what the problems are that you're going to confront ahead of time can be really useful. As long as you don't obsess over it and only do that. Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
So hopefully that gives you some ammo. I don't know.
Yeah. My strategy, read a book, get to work.
And work
2 separate steps.
Get to work real good. And find a mentor if you can.
Those can help.
They'll help you know which books to read, what mistakes to avoid, that kind of thing.
Speaking of which, we do have a book list.
We do.
Oh, yeah.
Books.bscotch.net. Maybe if you're trying to do a thing, maybe there'll be a book in there that will help you do that thing.
Scope it out.
Yeah. We have a section in there that's just general books that anybody should read, no matter what your discipline is. So at the very least, check those out. Our next question comes from Cathal, who says, I noticed the stats in Crashlands has a creatures deconstructed stat. Was this just a whimsical choice of words, or is it a pointer to some unspoken lore?
It's actually neither.
It's just a euphemism.
It's a euphemism for murder.
It was carefully chosen actually as a euphemism. I think it actually was murder, wasn't it, for a while?
Maybe.
Was it
was probably
deconstructed?
whimsically we put it in as murdered because
We
That's my
just
bet.
realized that, if we linguistically embrace the fact that you're basically genociding an entire continent of animals,
Yeah.
then that,
It's a little fucked up.
yeah, if you think about it.
So we wanted to soften it a bit.
we didn't want you to play through Crashlands and then look at your
Your murder
deconstructed
tally.
list
Yeah.
and be like, oh God,
I killed this many creatures.
I feel for these wampets. You know, no, we want you to be totally happy. Because people don't usually feel bad about cutting down trees. So that was the idea. How do we make it feel like you're just cutting down a really aggressive tree?
You're just deconstructing another type of resource that just happens to attack
That's
you
why we use the
sometimes.
same word for each one.
And a resource that you can also raise as a pet and have it follow you around.
Name and develop emotional
And, I think
bonds.
it's also, and there aren't any docile creatures, right? Everything attacks you.
Yeah. And that was another point is originally the Wampets were just completely docile.
Yep.
And then we added
And you murdered them.
Yep.
Yeah, so they just be hanging out, and you just run in like a
And also,
maniac.
and we talked about this in the past too. Also, there was this down mechanic.
Yeah.
So they were
would look
completely
super
docile.
sad.
We referred to it as murder or killing or something. And then when you killed them, you didn't actually kill them. They just got like really sad and shaky.
and they
And you had to deliver a
And then you
killing
had to
blow,
deliver a deliberate killing
which
blow.
was awesome because
you would
Flux did
fly
like a
in the
flip.
air,
was
flip,
spectacular.
and then like bring a weapon down full force onto their face, and then they would explode, and there'd be like a blood splat on the ground where they were. So we removed all of that.
It was
shit.
spectacular, but yeah, it was
Like, this is getting dark.
Yeah.
You know.
yeah.
Just
So,
wait.
so then we backed it way up because again, like the point of the game is to be this gleeful thing where we want you to be lost in it and feel like there's some reality there, but not all the bad kinds of reality. Because there's a lot of bad reality that we want to get you out of, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of the purpose. And there's enough things just being murdered all the time.
Yeah.
You know, just
And so, and I think really the turning point was, you know, of sort of getting that empathy problem taken care of was just having it so that the Wompets are docile generally,
Mhm.
but if you get too close to one, like real close, then it'll get pissed and come
Yeah.
after you. Or if you break apart sawgrass
Yeah.
next to it,
Yeah. Well,
then they get mad and attack.
as soon as the creatures become the aggressor, then it feels totally fine to just
It's
murder
justified.
them, almost all of them.
yeah.
Because you're like, that one Wampet, I broke a piece of grass, and that one Wampet tried to kill me. I'm killing all of
and we
these
deliberately we did it.
It's
So
just-
we originally, when we first had the like original tutorial of the game, we gave you a weapon first,
Mhm.
and then you went and you could fight Wompets first thing out of the gate. And we realized, no, we need to make you hate these things.
Mhm.
So we don't give you a weapon at all. And we make you collect a bunch of sawgrass first, because by going out and picking up sawgrass, you're going to piss off some Wompets, right?
Mhm.
So we put the player in a scenario where they are repeatedly getting attacked by these creatures and they can't defend themselves and they just have to run away. Then finally they get a sword and they're like, it's go time, right? So that would be, yeah, the progression of items and all those like aggro mechanics and stuff were very deliberate to try to, and then of course calling it deconstructing creatures. You know, it's all very deliberate to try to, you know, mitigate actually what's happening. All right, so we got one final question, which comes from Specchio, who says, in terms of player feedback and playtesting for your newest game, are you going to get the community involved sooner, later, or around the same stage in development as Crashlands? So in Crashlands, we did 2 testing phases. We did an alpha that was about 1 year into development, and then we did a beta, which was about a year after that.
And only 2 months before launch.
2 months before launch.
Mhm.
So I think the alpha, I think they were both good.
Yeah.
In terms of timing. So one was about halfway through development, one was toward the end of development. The alpha gave us a lot of insights about balance and stuff, but at the same time, I think
It was really early though.
it was really early. And this kind of reminds me of like sometimes people will send us games and ask for feedback on them, and then they'll also say, here's a list of all the things that are broken or unimplemented in my game.
Right.
And can you still give me feedback about the game? The answer is no,
Yeah.
because
It doesn't.
Yeah, you kind of need.
matter.
Well, you need all the. You at least need all the parts
Yeah.
because. So this is one of the problems we had because there's no story in it. I don't remember what other mechanics were missing.
I think we just had the savannah.
It
Sort
was
of. We
just- yeah.
just had the savannah. You couldn't go to the bog, and there was
No bosses.
There were no bosses.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just sort of working your way through the resources. So you
Correct.
fight
Were there chests
Wompets.
at that point?
maybe. I don't think there's anything in them.
Okay.
We had the art asset, but we hadn't figured out how to put it in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did have the infinite inventory. We did have the
had
build
that.
mode. So it was just kind of like the alpha was really just kind of a testing of the core underlying mechanics of the game.
Yeah,
But
but I
none
mean,
of the content.
Yeah,
really.
the important thing there is that without like the story components and without some of the other larger pieces in place, it ends up. I mean, you're kind of making decisions without full context, which is kind of dangerous to do. Dangerous in the sense that you can actually make what ends up being the wrong decision for the game as it will be,
Right.
Not versus what it is.
Yeah, and this is something that we often hear people talk about when they talk about, for example, making their game and then going into the polish phase,
Right.
where like they put all the mechanics in, they put all these systems in, and they develop it for like a year and a half or two, and then they're like, now let's add explosions, smoke, sound effects, you know, screen shake, whatever. And you have this weird problem where up until that point, you've been making all of your decisions about the balance of the game out of the context of what it's actually going to feel like to play the game, right? Because all those little points of feedback, all those like, you know, like smoke, fire, whatever, they make the game feel differently.
Mhm.
And the balance of a game is not about what is actually true mathematically. It's about what the game feels like. Right. And so this is why in pretty much any actually good platformer, there's a grace period. When you run off a ledge, you have like a 1/10 of a second to still jump, even when you're not actually touching anything. And yes, that is mathematically inconsistent with what should be true about the world. But whenever developers found that whenever they had it so that a player could not jump if their feet weren't touching the ground, period, then players felt like they couldn't make jumps. And they felt like the game was overly difficult and unfair, even though it was just doing exactly what you see, right? And so it's, you know, it's a bad idea to try to get feedback early. It's a bad idea.
I wouldn't say it's a bad idea, because I think the thing is,
Well, you have to know what you're
you
asking
have,
for.
you have to know what's missing, and you have to know what might be going in.
And you need to ask for specific things when you're asking for feedback. You can't just give somebody an unpolished, partially done thing and say, "What do you think about this?"
Because, well, and there's also a big problem too, which is like if you hand somebody something that's that unfinished and you say, "Hey, can I get some feedback?" In their mind, they're going, "Does this person think that this is good? And if so, how can I tell them it's not good without hurting their feelings? Because why would they be asking for feedback on something in this rough of a state?" You know?
Well, I think, the important note is that it is critical that you get feedback, that you do get feedback early and often. But again, coming back to the skills thing, I think it does take a while to learn how to listen to people and what they're talking about. And also from a design standpoint, to learn where the holes are going to be because of systems that are missing during dev. Because the reality is, like, even with us, you know, doing the alpha, all of the feedback sessions we did prior to the beta were extremely informative. Just not along the lines of balancing the whole game. It was usually around pieces of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing to know, is that you'll usually get one shot at doing the full balance once everything's in, which is the beta stage.
Yeah. But I will say we never tried to get feedback from people on things that we didn't feel good about.
Correct.
So even though like we had the savanna biome and we had all these recipes in there, we had all this armor, we had all the creatures, we had all the content there. And we felt like it was in a pretty good spot. So we didn't like leave out sound effects. We had all the music, we had all of the special effects of like when you fought stuff, you know, whatever. All the pieces were there. And so then we got actual feedback about what was there and not what was missing, because that's what your feedback will tend to focus on. So,
and I think, but one thing we did sort of learn a little bit unexpectedly, because you also will learn some unexpected things on parts that are not polished and ready to go yet. And I think for the alpha, that was a point where we had the concentric ring biomes.
Oh yeah.
And there wasn't really anything in the other ones, but you could still get there, right? And because the game is all about exploration and that sort of thing, we had, you know, carefully balanced, we thought, the sort of the size of the inner biome so that people could sort of complete it during the alpha and make it to the bog, even though there was really not much.
I think there was like a vomit in there.
There was like one
few
resource
plants,
or something. There was a few resources. So still enough to like kind of pull people in. And so what we got to observe was that people had the same sort of behavior of like looking for stuff and experiencing the game once they entered that next ring. And we actually played it because we played it during the alpha as well, and like actually fully play tested at that point. And what we and our playtesters found was those who made it there, even though the bog wasn't finished and we didn't intend people to hang out there, they had still gone through the kind of exploratory behavior and found that it basically sucked. Not because of what wasn't there, but just because of how
the actual
it was
design
designed. Yeah. That there was a design failure of that concentric rings, where the whole beauty of starting in the middle of a circle was that there's like a return point to come back to, and you can kind of keep on like trying other spots. But as soon as you're in a concentric ring outside of that, now all of a sudden it's like
you're not in the middle of it.
You're not in the middle. And so when you go like
starting on the edge, and you're always on the edge.
It's a ring. It's just really weird, because now it's not just like a matter of going away from where you were, and now you're in a more interesting spot. Like it feels like any direction you go now all of a sudden feels the same. And that was a thing we didn't really realize was a design flaw until, again, we weren't even planning to test it, but we still ended up getting that feedback because we were listening for it, at least when people, and people complain. They didn't complain about that. That's not how they said. They just didn't like going to the bog. Right. And that's what they kept on voicing. And then we had to figure out what that
the
meant.
math is the same. Right.
Yeah.
Again, no, it's not about the math. It's about how it feels.
Yep.
So at the very least, you can get that kind of feedback. So that's good.
But ask for specific feedback and know exactly what you're trying to pull off when you ask somebody for feedback. never just hand a thing over and say, "Can I get your feedback on this?"
Yeah. But I think here's another good final point about feedback is if somebody hands you something and asks for your feedback, first ask them what they think is wrong with it.
Also ask them how done it is.
Ask
Yeah.
them what done it is,
Say
and
what-
ask them what aspects of it they're looking for feedback
Yeah.
on.
What state is this thing in? What kind of feedback do you need? And what do you think is wrong with this game? Because also, you don't want to spend time talking to them about things that they already know, right?
Mhm.
But I think importantly, if you say, what do you think is wrong with this? And they say, I think it's great. And then
They don't want your feedback.
really, they're just wanting a pat on the back. And you just look at it and go, yeah, it's great. And just hand it back because they're not going to listen to anything you say anyways. So,
Mhm.
all right. So, that's all we got for this week. Thanks everybody for listening. We'd also like to thank our producer, Fat Bard, and our studio wrangler, Monique. Just kidding. She's gone.
But she will be back.
She will be back. We would like to thank the Butterscotch dev team for continuing to build stuff while we're here, screaming like a bunch of maniacs. We'd also like to thank our community moderators who keep our Discord and forums running. And of course, we'd like to thank our listeners for coming back every week to listen to us rambling like a group of weirdos. Also, if you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can hop on into our Discord, which is at bit.ly/BSDiscord. Say hello. I also realized that caps matters on this. The BS is capitalized.
Oh,
nothing
really?
else is.
Yeah, Billy Link's
So,
cap sensitive.
We should probably, get some more iterations of that and have them all point to the same place.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be confusing.
I did not know that you did that.
Yeah. All right. And also, we don't advertise this show, so we depend completely on word of mouth and good reviews to kind of get the word out and grow our audience. So if you want to help us grow, just let people know. Tell people about the show. Head on to iTunes or wherever you get the podcast, where you can send us, or where you can rate it and give us some of those gold stars or tomatoes or like whatever kind of rating system there is going on. Every little bit helps. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace.